Well, today there's a lot of wind in Paris. I'm extremely cold, but I do realize that this is because of fasting, anyways. And it's gonna be almost like a week that I'm fasting. I'm still so mesmerized by not mesmerized, but it's funny when you decide to just like do you and not really give a shit about what other people think of you or how people are going to perceive you, especially outside. And today I'm recording something from outside and I have a few people who do look, right? And I'm just literally with a mic and my phone recording, but I guess people are curious, right? Sometimes I actually want to have a conversation for people with people who are just looking, and just get into their thoughts and be and just understand like what goes through their own thoughts, like when you look at something, it's like, do you ask yourself something? Do you want to interact? Are you curious? I really truly believe that people who are looking at you when you do something, it's just curiosity. It's not so much judgment. And this wasn't supposed to be the content of this podcast, of this episode, but now that I think of it, I truly think that people who look, indeed, we can decide to see it as curiosity and we can just decide to again switch the narrative and just be like, oh, people are curious. And curiosity equals connection, equals maybe a spark for conversation. We don't have to interact all the time, but in my own spirit of connection over consumption, I do want to do that at some point. So maybe like the next person who actually passes by and just looks at me with my mic, because I'm also in an alley in the park where there's a lot of movement. So obviously you see someone with a microphone, you just want to, So whoever's looking at me next, I'll literally just ask them, "Hey, what's up?" And then we just have a conversation or not. Maybe I'm going to be rejected, but who cares? At least connection over consumption. Bon, let's just go back to the topic at hand. I wanted to talk about Ramadan. I wanted to talk about the last few days. So I literally started on Monday. It started officially on the 18th, which was last week on Wednesday, but God made me a woman. And with being a woman, I was exempted for the first 5 days. And since Monday, cuckoo, see? Connection over consumption. She was so cute on her little bike. Anyways, I started Monday and I'm not going to say it's tough. I really thought that it was going to be harder because the last few times I did it, I stopped because I was starting to have anemia. I started like passing out, and I think I wasn't really in the best conditions, and physically maybe. Um, and when I started doing it, I was like, "Bon, let's just see. We see 1 day, we see 2 days, we see how I feel." I was expecting headaches. I was expecting lack of energy. I was expecting being completely low, and I find myself being full of energy. I'm not gonna lie. 4 p.m. in the afternoon is where I start to dip and where I just decide to either lay down or read a book or watch a movie or anything, because these are the last 2.5 hours remaining before we break fast. But outside of that, from literally 5 a.m. until 4 p.m., which is a good 10 hours, 9, 10 hours. I suck at math. How the fuck did I get a business for like 7 years without being able to do a fucking addition? Ramadan. Today, I think really I'm feeling tired and low energy. But regardless, what I find really beautiful over the past few days is a few things. Clarity. I don't know. This is the first thing that came to me. And every day in my morning pages, I just write about this. I just feel more clear. Even it feels like, there's this fog that is being lifted, sort of. And I'm not saying that I have an idea of what it is that I actually want to be doing or where it is that I actually want to be living as a country. But I still feel like there's movement. And actually, I moved because I bought my tickets and I booked my Airbnb. So it's steps, right? But it just feels like this sense of clarity, this sense of there is, again, clouds that are being, the clouds are moving and the sky is becoming more and more blue, which I'm really loving. And I love it when my sky is like clouded and everything. I love all seasons of my life, you know, even when it's raining, because every season brings its load of blessings. But I also like the blue sky. So a greater sense of clarity, I think a stronger sense of hope, a stronger sense of faith, you know, in the fucking unknown. Sorry, I'm cursing, but in the unknown. It's really the year, the stage of my life where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of things that I don't know. And I think that I'm starting to like the fact that I don't know. I'm starting to like, again, the fact that I am a beginner at a lot of things, at this podcast, at my storytelling project, the portrait series videos, my social media as well. And I have hope, I have faith, and that I am going to figure it out, you know, and I'm already figuring it out because I am moving. So this whole sense of, it's very connected to that sense of clarity and that sense of the fog being lifted, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm enjoying more and more being a beginner. I'm enjoying more and more shifting also, especially with my social media. And yesterday I found myself not wanting to post, which brings me to this third point. I feel like this sense of self-approval, you know, approving myself, approving my thoughts, my ideas, my emotions, my sensations, and just seeing it as legit, seeing it all as it matters, what I think, what I believe, how I see the world, is legit and matters. So there's really this sense of finally giving myself approval is absolutely delicious. You know, and an example is that a few of my friends called me this week and I didn't want to answer. I'm sorry for whomever is listening to this episode. I love you, my dear friends, my dearest friends, and you know, these are the closest ones to me, but I didn't want to answer. I just looked and I was like, non, j'ai pas envie, you know? And that for me is massive approval. And the biggest approval even after that is going back to the conversation and just talking with the person, not even apologizing or, you know, obviously, like if they call a few times, I'm like, hey, is there anything urgent? And if not, then we just keep texting. And I don't enter the conversation with, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I'm fasting and I'm saving my energy and everything. It's just that I don't need to do that. So it's that sense of approving myself without explaining, without justifying, without finding a reason, but just I am existing and I am answering when I want to answer. And obviously, I called my friends back because I wanted to talk, but I also chose the moment where I wanted to talk as well and not showing that constant availability, you know. So is this, again, is this sense of choosing myself again and approving of my thoughts and approving of my feelings and approving of my needs, realizing that at that specific moment when my friends called me, I didn't need to call. I didn't want to call. So for me, this is a big one. And I think just feeling slower, you know, I said that in one of my videos, realizing that indeed thinking about food, planning my day around food is literally one of my favorite things to do. And now that I don't have food, that food is removed from the equation, I have so much space, I have so much time, and I realize that, sorry, I can do a lot more. And what I mean by lot more is not necessarily be productive and optimize and everything, but just there's this sense of there is so much time. You know, there is so much time to be with myself, to be with my thoughts, to go to the park, to sit, to observe, to record a podcast or a video or not, to focus on my storytelling project or not, you know, realizing that there's so much time and I get to decide how I want to use it without, optimizing anything or at the end of the day being like, oh, my day was so fruitful, my day was so successful because I did X and Y and Z and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Ah, c'était pas mal. Nice rhythm. But my day can also be successful because I just went outside, I went for a walk, I didn't touch my phone. I just stayed and read a book, or I just stayed and did some crochet, or I just sat in the park without any sort of distraction and listened to the wind and watched the flowers move, or just watched people, you know? So this for me is like absolutely delicious, and it's been such a long time since I actually wanted to live like that, you know, just basically live, you know? So, yeah, expansion. And the biggest thing, like I'm, you know, every day I have this note where that I called Faith, and it's a notebook on my digital notebook that is called Remarkable. It is amazing. Buy it. So it's a notebook when the first book, like the first page, is dedicated to my studying the Quran, you know, and the second page is how, like, my findings since I'm, you know, sort of like the learnings, or how do I want to call it? I don't know yet how to call it, but the glimpses, let's call it the glimpses. Maybe this is it, you know, even this episode is just like the glimpses of everything that's been happening since I started fasting, and since I came back to my faith, and or like strengthening my faith and starting with Ramadan, you know. But the biggest thing is really cherishing um, everything that is around us, physically, emotionally, spiritually as well, but especially you as a person in your energy. It's not infinite, and obviously, since I'm not eating, like, of course during the day I do feel the dip, right? Around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, I do feel the dip, but I do have a lot of energy even when I don't eat. And then it's just this realization of there is so much in your body, that you have so much energy, that you just start thinking about where it is that you actually want to put it, right? And it is, I still haven't figured it out yet, right? But doing this, for example, this recording this episode, sitting on this bench, looking at people, these are all things that you put your energy into that, right? So, but it's also thinking of how, or like, not how to save it, but where do you want to really allocate it, and how it can expand even more, even when you don't have food in your system, if that makes sense. It's like, if I just look at people moving and going through the park, I know it's gonna sort of get back to me tenfold, because I don't know, I'll find inspiration, I'll look at people's features and faces and smiles, or I'll just smile at people or interact with one of them, and it's energy well spent. Let's put it this way, it's energy well spent. And I think that this is sometimes something that we forget, even even when we walk, you know. I realize that obviously now I'm walking slower, because I cannot walk the same way I walk during the day when I have fuel or coffee or a piece of croissant, you know. I walk slower. I feel each and every step that I do, and slow is nice. Walking slow gives me back even more energy, you know? And it just makes me realize that sometimes we just do things in a very rushed way, in a very, like, we're aggressive, even with us, even with ourselves, even in the way we speak, even in the way we walk, even in the way we just think. You know, sometimes thinking is like a whole jujitsu, you know. It can be really mental jujitsu, whilst thinking can also be just like a walk in the park, no pun intended, but you know what I mean. It can also be done with like softness, with calm, with sweetness. It can also be a nice experience to think, even when you overthink. You know, it can be thought with ruminating, quote unquote. Can also be like, hey, but okay, it's here. Let's just you know, tranquille. And you observe actually that when you start overthinking and ruminating, that there's no, you don't even want to do that. So I don't know, it's this whole loop of thinking of my energy, and being more grateful for it as well, being more mindful of it, and not in a sense of keeping it again, but how can I do, how can I bring more energy to the level of energy that I currently have, you know, recycling it, upcycling it, même pas recycle, but upcycle, make more or make better with what I have. Voilà. These are the rumination of the tribulation of what I'm experiencing with fasting at the moment and with doing Ramadan. I really, I think also the last one, and I'm going to stop here, is really that sense of feeling I am connected to people around me, to people around the world. Also, I don't know, I have this sense of more compassion, more compassion, more empathy. Like, I bought two croissants to a guy this morning who was like, "Hey, can you buy me a croissant?" I was like, "Of course," and I just went and bought croissants for him, instead of like giving him money. Like, he didn't ask money. I mean, he asked money, and then he said, "Hey, can you maybe buy me a croissant?" Instead, I was like, "Yeah, of course." But even like giving food to people, or to people that I find outside who are either like asking for money or are not in a privileged position, I just buy food and I just give them food, even if it's just like two or three pieces of fruit that I have in my bag. Go for it, my friend. Um, and I don't know, a bigger sense of empathy, bigger sense of connection also to other people, to when I'm in Paris, I usually look at people. I'm like, oh my God, they're so depressed, you know? And then instead of saying that and emphasizing and exacerbating that feeling, I'm just like, okay, but maybe something happened to them today. Maybe something's happening in their lives right now. Let's just, I don't know, even with my energy, let's just give them some love. Let's just give them a smile, even if they're like not polite. Literally, the guy at the post office this morning, I just asked politely and nice, and I was like, hey, can I borrow your pen? He just literally like almost threw it to me. He was, you could tell that he was like grumpy. You could tell that he, on a Saturday morning, he didn't want to work. He literally put the pen on the table, like, and I was like, thank you, even though deep down I was like, you mother effer. But still, I decided to be like, thank you, and gave him a smile. He completely ignored me. But for me, I was like, it's okay. He probably doesn't want to be here. And I know it's not my responsibility and everything. But if, I don't know, he might have seen my smile, or he might have felt my energy, and he can grab that with him, then let's just be it. It's free. And coucou. Ça te perturbe que je parte toute seule? Au revoir. See? So cute. Have a good day. See? Bye bye. Connection over consumption. I think I'm going to stop here, but again, empathy. And I'm just hoping that you find something that you can take with you today from this episode. Allez, bisous.